The words of Paul so vividly describe heaven's view of how we should respond after we've given our lives to God. He talks about the fact that Christ gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for himself his own special people, zealous of good works, Titus 2 and verse 14. Friends, we see that we are special to God, and our response to that knowledge is that we should work for it with zeal. Work to please God with zeal. The Greek word for zeal is used to describe water that is being heated and then reaches the boiling point. It might have at one time been stone cold, but then it became lukewarm, but the end result is so obvious to all. It's been heated up, but now it's boiling over. And Paul uses this word to describe his devotion to Judaism, and then repeatedly he used it to describe his service to God after his conversion. There is not another story in the Bible which shows the application of this message better than the events that happened early in the public life of Jesus. At his first miracle performed at the wedding in Cana, he said to his mother in John 2 and verse 4, "My hour has not yet come." But because of her insistence, he began at that time displaying his divine power. Shortly thereafter, he was in Jerusalem, where he manifested exactly who he was and why he had came. Well, he had obviously come to do what his Father had instructed him to do. Before he came into this world, he knew that he was to be given the body of a man, and he knew how he should use that body in serving God. He said, "A body you have prepared for me. Behold, I come to do your will," Hebrews 2, verses 5 through 9. So Jesus was in Jerusalem, and we look at how fervently he used his body. He came into the temple, and there he saw a very unsettling situation. He looked around, and he saw the oxen, the sheep, the doves, and the tables of the money changers. And what followed had to startle all of those who saw Jesus. For Jesus took a whip, and he drove those thieves that had turned the house of the Lord into a den of thieves, drove them out of the temple complex, because what they were doing was not providing a service, but what they were doing was taking advantage of their fellow man, taking advantage of those who had traveled a great distance to be able to worship in Jerusalem, and charging them exorbitant fees in order to exchange their money for that which would be accepted in the temple treasury, charging them large amounts of money for animals that could be used in sacrifices. And Jesus saw that what they were doing was trying to pad their own pockets rather than try to be of assistance to their fellow man. Now, Jesus' disciples, they were there. They didn't understand what he was doing, why he was doing it. It was only later that they remembered the prophecy about Jesus in John 2, verses 14 through 17, where it says, "The zeal for your house has swallowed me up." Jesus recognized the significance of that place and the purpose of that place, and it broke his heart. It angered him to see what people had done to that place. He was consumed by what he saw. His spiritual temperature began to rise. It then boiled over. And what he left in his wake was empty stores and overturned tables. Now, as you look at him who has left us this example that we should follow, look at yourself. What is your spiritual temperature of service? As you use the body that God has prepared for you, what is your level of devotion? What are you willing to do in service to God? Think about Jesus and how he responded. Now, I'm not advocating that we bust into church buildings and we start turning over tables and driving people out. But what I do urge you is to let your devotion become more and more fervent as you become more and more like Christ. So the question that we look at is, what is your spiritual temperature? Is it stone cold? Is it lukewarm? Or is it boiling over? Do you have that burning zeal for service to God? Think about these things and have a blessed day.